And we are live on the Bullpen Podcast. Welcome in. It is Wednesday, September 1st, 2021. We are super excited to be here with you tonight. My name is Chris Krugman. I will be one of your co-hosts along with my boy Adam Kunos. We have a new name tonight. We are now called the Bullpen Podcast. New name, same podcast, same host. Same jam. We'll be bringing you all of your MLB news, notes, highlights, fun stories from around the league. You can find us on the Twitterverse at ShyBears1985 for myself, at Kunos19 for Adam, and at the 2Es Bullpen Pod for the show Twitter page. The changes go really around the Lounge Room Network. We would like to thank the Lounge Room Network, Juan and Adam and Brandon. They helped us get this started. They supported us greatly, and myself and Adam want to thank them, wish them the best of luck in all of their future endeavors. They decided to dissolve the Lounge Room Network, but we will press on, and we're having fun and hope you are too. Adam, my man, how are you tonight?
I am doing good. Nothing like a White Sox killing of the Cubs, minus the second game. We're not going to talk about that, but Chicago is a White Sox town going forward. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Going forward. All right, we'll talk about that. So we are brought to you tonight by Fanatics. Fanatics is your one-stop shop for everything Major League Baseball. Head on over to Fanatics, use our Linktree link to get a special discount, and let them know that the Bullpen Pod sent you. We can be found on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon podcasts, along with many other podcast formats. Please look for us. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And let's kick this show off with some series recaps. Adam wants to gloat and talk about the beating of a minor league baseball team in the Chicago Cubs. But
why not?
How are you liking the White Sox-Cubs rivalry right now, Adam? You're saying it's a White Sox town now in Chicago, which in my opinion it will never ever be. Just throwing that out there.
I mean, agree to disagree. So, I mean, it was a good series overall. I mean, I think the highlight of the series was Grandal's epic return to the Chicago White Sox, just teeing off on Chicago pitching over the weekend, and total 3 home runs, countless RBIs, and good to see him behind the plate again. Good to see him back with the team. We have definitely missed his offensive presence because as he got injured, he was actually starting to get back into his offensive groove. He started to get his power back, and he's had 4 home runs in the last 4 games he's played. So
I feel like offense is never really the White Sox problem. I feel like every other day, it's a new White Sox player smashing the hell out of the ball or coming off an injury and hitting multiple home runs or RBIs. What's homie's name that just had his 6th straight year of 100 RBIs?
Jose Abreu, MVP.
Jose Abreu. We'll see. I mean, you lead a handicap division, and he's a superstar. We are big Abreu fans on the podcast, so no disrespect to that man throwing out his 100th RBI for the 6th straight season. The issue in Chicago for me seems to be the pitching. I just don't see consistency. There might not be that number one dominant pitcher that can, go out on the bump every 5 days and shut a team down. But I don't watch the White Sox day in and day out. I do, see Lance Lynn and Giolito and the guys doing their thing a lot of the times. But talk to me about the pitching staff. Do you think this staff is a playoff staff that can go out there 1, 2, 3 and knock them out?
That's kind of questionable right now. I'll go back to the series against Chicago, to where Keuchel had a horrible outing, gave up 6 runs in the first inning. Lance Lynn did the same thing. He gave up I believe, 5 runs in the second inning of that series, and the pitching is now becoming questionable. I mean, this was supposed to be a good pitching staff, starting rotation, bullpen that was going to go in, shut you down, shut a game out, but they have struggled. Lance Lynn is now in the DL. Lucas Giolito is heading to the DL, so you can look at maybe it's the ideal time for him to go in DL, but not the greatest time going in October. The pitching is starting to be a little bit of a concern, and the question will now be, can they rebound once they get Lynn back into rotation, once they get Giolito back in rotation? Can they be that formidable rotation that was talked about leading up to the season?
I mean, as a staff, as an overall staff, they're not awful, right? I mean, their opponents' strikeouts per game is almost 10. They only allow a 226 batting average, 384 slugging, which is, that's great. Under 400 is awesome. And an on-base percentage under 300 at 296. And it obviously that leads to an OPS of 680, which for an opponent's OPS under 700, I think is pretty solid for an overall staff. It's constantly getting into that bullpen that's going to be challenging if the starters can't kind of get it done. So hopefully they can round it out and get on track to be, that playoff team and have their pitching staff mirror the offense that brings it on a regular basis. For anyone tracking at home, I put a wager on the White Sox tonight. So if they lose, we now know that I 100% control the White Sox destiny and can bet or not bet on every game. So if you're a White Sox fan and you want to throw me $5 to not bet on the game, I am more than happy to take your money.
I will throw money at you not to bet at them. I will say about the pitching, though, real quick. I will say maybe a bright spot for the White Sox will be Kopech and Lopez, Ronaldo Lopez. They have actually been productive out of the bullpen. Ronaldo Lopez struggled in AAA, had I believe above 5 ERA, but since he was called back up coming out of the bullpen, he's been lights out. Mid-1 ERA. His fastball has a little more velocity on it. His breaking pitches have a little more dip and a little more movement to them. So he is a complete opposite pitcher than when you saw last year, who struggled as a starter. But I think he works better as a bullpen guy, as a long reliever who can do those 1 to 2 starts to kind of fill the gaps in the rotation. So those could be your 2 bright spots going into the playoffs for the White Sox.
Awesome. Good stuff, Adam. As far as the AL Central goes, the division that the White Sox lead by 10 games, the White Sox in their last 10 are 5-5. The hottest team in the division right now is Cleveland, and they are 7-3 over their last 10. The White Sox run differential is at plus 141. It is by far the best in the American League Central and is 4th overall in the third overall in the American League. My fault. But it does look like on the surface they're improving the record we've talked about, which is the record against teams above 500. They're still under 500 themselves at 29-33, but I do feel like that is a slight improvement. Their overall record is 77-56, and with their run differential at plus 141, their expected win-loss record is 81-52, which to me means that pitching staff and some of the errors and kind of nuances of baseball is what's catching them up and not allowing them to execute on those 4 extra wins. But it's 4 wins. I mean, shit happens in baseball, right? It's not a big deal. We're not going to beat up on the White Sox. They're a good team. Moving on to the next series that we talked about last week, probably one of the best series of the weekend in the National League is the San Francisco Giants and the Atlanta Braves. The Braves won the series 2-1. I did not get to see enough of this series, but I do think the Braves pretty much handled the Giants pretty well. I think I saw a 9-0 score on Saturday, and I want to say another shutout or pretty close from the Braves. Adam, do you have more details on this series?
Yeah, so game 1 went to the Braves. It was a 6-5 win. They lost game 2. They were shut out 5-0, but then they came back to shut out the Giants 9-0. So, I mean, overall, it traded back and forth between, I would say game 1 was definitely your pitching performance that you needed. Obviously, a one-run game. Both teams were evenly matched in that game. San Francisco came out swinging in game 2, but then failed to show up in the Sunday matinee game. 9-0 loss. I mean, I think
who did San Francisco end up rolling out there? Because we didn't have a starting pitcher when we recorded last week, and I think Ian Anderson went for the Braves. That game 1 pitching matchup was solid with Gossman and Fried. A 6-5 game is interesting. I'm not, like I said, I didn't get to see much of that series, so I'm curious how that kind of played out. The Logan Webb versus Drew Smiley game 2, not surprised to see. Logan Webb has been pitching phenomenally, so I'm not surprised to see a 5-0 win for the Giants. I knew I saw that score. I just couldn't remember which side it was on.
And San Francisco put up, I'm probably going to botch his name, so my apologies. Diaz Capina only went 3 innings, gave up 6 hits, 3 earned runs, struck out 4, but it gave up 2 home runs in his 3 outings. So not a good performance from him on Sunday.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, the Giants have been great all year, and the Atlanta Braves have been hot currently. So tough game tough series for the Giants. Good series for the Braves. After that series, the Braves have run into a little bit of trouble. They have lost 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers, who are also kind of catching fire right now. As far as the American or the National League East, the Braves still lead the division by 2.5 games. They have a plus 89 run differential. They are playing 500 ball at home, above 500 ball by a lot on the road. They're 7 games under against teams above 500. The hottest team in that division is actually the Philadelphia Phillies, who are 6-4 over their last 10, but have won 5 straight. The New York Mets are 5.5 games back. They've won 3 straight, but they've got their own drama that we will get into a little bit later. As far as the National League West goes, and the San Francisco Giants still leading that division, but the Dodgers are coming. The Giants are only up by a half game in the loss column, 84-48, and the Dodgers are 84-49. But the Dodgers are 7-3 over their last 10, 1-2 straight. The Giants have lost 3 straight. Run differential for the Giants is at 141, which is the same as the Chicago White Sox. So that's pretty interesting considering their record and how they've a little bit outperformed their expected win-loss of 81-51, where the White Sox have underperformed their run differential. So that's kind of some nuanced stuff that we're seeing with this Giants team, which makes me a little iffy on them for the playoffs. Their records are outstanding, obviously, with an 84-48 record. They're 42-21 at home, 42-27 on the road, 6 games over against 500 teams at 35-29. So they are just absolute fire. But I think they lost 2 to Milwaukee. Yeah, they've lost 2 to Milwaukee. They're playing them again tonight. That game starts in about half an hour. The Dodgers are playing the Braves again. They've beat them twice. Adam, are we seeing a changing of the guard? We'll start with the National League West, and then we'll jump over to the East and talk a little bit about the Phillies and the Mets and the Braves and seeing if anybody's going to do anything special there. In this National League West, this has become the best race in baseball.
It has, and we looked at early when we started this podcast that the Giants were probably going to run away with this division just because of how good they were playing. But I think a lot of people at the beginning of the season were like, can San Francisco keep this up? And maybe we're seeing that little teeter where they're starting to fall by the wayside, but I don't think it's going to be anything to where they're going to follow the playoff race completely. They pretty much locked up at least a playoff seed at this point. So, but I will give it, I mean, everyone's going to have a couple bad weeks. I don't remember any team just coasting through a regular season without having a bump in the road of 2 bad weeks of baseball. You're going to have it. It all depends on when you have it, though. Do you have it in August? Do you have it in June? Do you have it right before the playoffs? Or do you start slow and then do you just pick it up right after that? So I expect San Francisco to rebound. I think they'll be fine. And like I said, now it just becomes, can they hold off LA?
Yeah, so the Dodgers, since the last time we talked to you guys, were in the middle of a sweep of the Padres. They ended up completing that sweep on Thursday, and then they lost the weekend series to Colorado 2-1, and then they beat the Braves 2 games in a row. So, but before that series against San Diego, the series sweep against San Diego, they took 3 out of 4 from the Mets. They swept the Pittsburgh Pirates. They swept the Mets. They took 2 out of 3 from Philadelphia. They took 2 out of 3 from the Angels. I mean, they are playing, upper 600, 700 ball right now, and just really putting it all together from both sides of the plate and the pitching staff, who is great. And they don't even have, their whatever $1 million man Trevor Bauer taking the field anymore. They they're rolling out old man David Price, and he's looking fantastic as well. So
I mean,
whatever they're doing out there in LA is working.
They had the Fountain of Youth somewhere in that stadium. We just gotta find it. I could use it.
Yeah, me too, friend. I am exhausted. I've been up since 4:30 this morning, and I'm ready for bed, but I like talking about baseball. So let's rock and roll and keep going with the series recaps. The Yankees and A's split the series 2-2. Yankees lead the season series 4-3. What happened in this series? The Yankees kind of, teetered off a little bit. They were on that monster winning streak. I think it got up to 13, 14, 15 games. I can't even remember what the final total was. But then they kind of hit a wall in Oakland, lost 2 of those games. Well, they won the first 2, and then they lost the next 2, and then they lost 2 more after that. So they're actually on a 4-game skid. What's going on with the Yankees?
I mean, winning streaks are a good thing to have, but when they stop, they come to a crashing halt, and it all depends on how you rebound from it. And the Yankees, I think, caught fire at the right time. They found themselves back in the wild card race, and now, I mean, they could potentially face Oakland again in a wild card game if, for some reason, Boston falls off the radar. They could potentially rematch at Yankee Stadium for that 1-game playoff. And it is a good possibility that Oakland overtakes Boston coming up to potentially have a rematch, that 1-game rematch, which will be a fun game. I'm not going to lie. If that ends up being the case, that will definitely be a good game to tune in for.
Are we saying Oakland versus the Yankees or Boston, or are we saying Boston versus the Yankees for the playoff spot, the second playoff spot? Because the Yankees have a 2-game lead on the second playoff spot right now. It would be Boston and Oakland if there were a playoff right now. But 2 games is nothing. I mean, especially in this crazy time we got going on here.
Well, flashback 2019, you had a 1-game playoff for the NL Central, and then you had a 1-game playoff for, I believe, the NL West. So you had 2 1-game playoffs, and the losers of those teams end up meeting in the wild card round. So you had the Brewers beat the Cubs that year, you had the Dodgers beat the Rockies, and then the Rockies beat the Cubs. So you had pretty much a 3-game series just taking place in different ballparks.
These are facts. Well, the the A's bring it. We've talked about the A's, all year as a small market team that continue to be successful. Starling Marte was an excellent addition to that team. They actually have some really solid pitching that we'll actually talk a little bit about later with Frankie Montas and Paul Blackburn and Cole Irvin coming up in the weekend series against the Blue Jays. So the A's they're a good squad. I mean, when you look at the standings, the Yankees have the 2-game lead on the first playoff spot. They're still 8 games out of that AL East because the Tampa Bay Rays just keep winning a shit ton. They're 9-1 in their last 10. And since we didn't have a series recap, we'll talk a little bit about them in the AL East. The Rays lead that division, have a plus 171 run differential. They're actually outperforming that as well, being the number 2 run differential team in the American League, and they're outperforming their expected wins by a couple. They beat teams over 500 very consistently. They win on at home, they win on the road. They are absolutely dominating right now, and they're a team that, kind of like the Giants, but not. They win, and you kind of expect it at this point. I mean, Wander Franco coming up, middle of, I think it was May or June, has just been absolute fire. They have another kid coming up that potentially that we'll talk about with the September call-ups. Yankees and Boston are basically fighting for the wild card spots at this point. We're in September now, last month of regular season baseball. I'm fired up, if you can't tell, because this is going to be a great race. I wish Toronto knew how to win, because they're still rocking that 116 run differential and still, playing teams over 500 really well. They're just in a really tough division. If Toronto is in the AL or in the NL East, which I forgot to recap totally, but they would be in second place and have the highest run differential. Yeah, I mean, good God, hats off to the AL East and hats off to the Tampa Bay Rays for just kicking some ass. Don't bet your wife anymore.
No, I kind of learned my lesson. The only time we'll meet again is if for some reason the White Sox and Rays meet up in the ALCS, and that'll be a different story. Sorry, one quick correction. My stat gave for 2018. Cubs missed the playoffs in 2019, so that was 2018. We had the 2 one-game playoffs for the division, so I got that wrong, but I was corrected.
We accept your apology, and
I am glad.
It doesn't really matter, because the Iowa Cubs are not going to be making the playoffs for a while. As far as the AL West is concerned, in the Oakland Athletics, they are 4.5 games back of the division. They're not completely out of distance or yelling distance from the Houston Astros. The Astros still continue to play pretty well. They have a plus 172 run differential, which is number 1 in the American League, but they are underperforming a little bit. Their expected win-loss is 83-50, and they're only at 78-55. So they can be beat. They're 5-5 in their last 10. Oakland, unfortunately, is 4-6. Seattle is 6-4, and they're still hanging tight. Seattle's only 3 games back of that wild card spot. They are, trying their best to hang on and stay in it. I think this division is going to go to Houston, but Oakland could pull it off. But I think Oakland ends up fighting for that number 2 spot with Boston or the Yankees. Boston, as we talked about, stumbled out of the All-Star break, but kind of seemed to find themselves in August. They're playing good baseball. Anything else you want to talk about in the AL West or the American League in general before we kind of jump topics or actually wrap up the National League? Because I want to talk about the Central and the East a little bit.
One thing, the one series I'll be looking for with Houston and Oakland will be the last full weekend in September, the 24th through 26th. Oakland will be home versus Houston, so that could be your deciding factor for the AL West then, if Houston doesn't wrap it up by then or catches fire, or if they still play 500, this may be that deciding series.
And Oakland, Houston, they have like 6 series left. Most of them are against teams that are trash up until the last 3 series of the year, starting September 24th. They get 3 against Oakland, 3 against Tampa Bay, and then 3 more against Oakland at the beginning of October. So that week and a half span is really going to determine a lot of things in the American League in general and the American League West. If Oakland has kind of crushed these lower teams and separated themselves. Houston has kind of crushed these teams and separated themselves. Then those last 3 series may not mean that much. But if somehow, San Diego pulls their head out of their ass against Houston, and Seattle keeps their dogfight up, and the Angels, do something, and I don't know. I mean, there's some things that could happen there, but Houston has a pretty decent stretch starting September 3rd of just some pretty mediocre teams that they should handle pretty well. But you're right, Adam. That last series against Oakland is going to be fun and good times. Going back over to the National League, since we didn't wrap up the East because I'm an idiot.
It's all good. The
Braves are probably going to win this division. Philadelphia is hot. They're 6-4, won 5 straight. The Mets have some talent. They have some public relations issues that could either spark the players and have kind of a mini mutiny / we're going to do it for ourselves kind of thing going on. Miami and Washington might get eliminated by next week, so I don't think they are in any kind of danger. But again, Philadelphia is only 2 games back of the wild card. Mets are 5 games back of the wild card, which is all very surprising. The Padres currently have the 2nd wild card spot. The Dodgers have the 1st and have it by a long shot. So that 2nd wild card spot is really what's up for grabs in the National League. The NL Central, the Cincinnati Reds have, continued to kind of put together enough to where they are tied for that wild card spot. They're 10.5 games back on Milwaukee, who's played extremely well over their last 10. They're 7-3. They have a plus 125 run differential. They're playing very well at home, extremely well on the road. They are beating teams over 500. They have handled the Giants this week pretty well. But the other teams in, the Central, the St. Louis Cardinals, they're only a game and a half back of the wild card, which, a few weeks ago we didn't think was even possible. I don't think they'll keep this up. Where are you at with this NL Central and the NL East, Adam?
Well, I'm sticking with Milwaukee. I picked them to win the NL Central at the beginning of the season. I said they could win mid-90 games. That's still a good, reasonable number they could hit. They're at 81-52, so they could still reach that mid-90 mark. Cincinnati's been surprising. I didn't really have Cincinnati even close to being a playoff team this year. Obviously, last year with that 60-game season and that 8-team playoff, they snuck in and just pretty much bounced out to the wild card round. Same with St. Louis. I give the division to Milwaukee, but hats off to Cincinnati. They are making some noise in that wild card race. They caught to San Diego. They had them beat by a couple games for a while, but now fell into kind of a virtual tie. So could a NL wild card playoff game, a 1-card playoff game for that 2nd wild card spot be out of reasonable right now? I think not.
Definitely not. The way all these teams are kind of putting together some wins, I think that's not out of the realm of possibilities. And it's not, just the wins, it's losses by their counterparts. And it's almost like a blow for blow boxing match where, LA is coming out firing and trying to take over that National League West, and then Cincinnati's brought the Thunder, and Milwaukee's like, yeah, no, we're still the dominant team in the NL Central. Atlanta put up their punches. Philly came back with their counter punches, and the Mets. I still don't think they're 2 games under 500. They can't beat anybody. I mean, at least they're 13 games over at home, but they're 15 under on the road, which is gross. So yes, absolutely. This NL race is going to be interesting for that second wild card spot. I think the overall better baseball might be in the National League. I mean, we have 3 teams over 80 wins versus only 1 in the American League. I mean, obviously Houston and Chicago are close, but overall, as far as wins are concerned, got Atlanta. I can't believe the NL East is so garbage.
I mean,
like, they're a 70-win team and they're leading their division, and that's like 10 games less than any other division leader.
This reminds me of the NL West, I think, back in like the mid-2000s, where San Diego would win the division with only 84 wins back-to-back seasons, and
end up in the World Series against the 110-win Yankees or whatever.
Pretty much.
Yeah. All right, Adam. Well, let's talk about what is going on around the league. And we'll start with the Yankees winning streak coming to an end. We talked about this. What was the final total of the streak, Adam?
I believe it was a 13-game winning streak. I'm backtracking a little to see if I can.
We'll start counting here in a minute. I know they've lost their last 4. I stopped looking at win numbers because it was making me nauseous. But let's see here: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 13 game winning streak, which I think I also saw that. So I saw a couple things on this where it was the longest winning streak in Yankee history since like Mickey Mantle and Lou Gehrig and shit, which blew my mind.
Yeah, early 30s. They've had when they had this winning streak late into the season. 32, I believe it was.
1932, or they won 32 games.
1932. I mean, you could have won 32 games back then to still make the playoffs, but
for sure, and that Yankee team probably could have. But I also saw an interesting thing that Oakland also has a 13-game winning streak this year, which is fascinating to me. Once again, we're talking about Oakland and the Yankees, big market, small market, all of these nuanced, fun facts of baseball. But the Yankees are on a 4-game losing streak now. They won the first 2 against Oakland. Then Oakland broke the winning streak and won 2 in a row against the Yankees. And then the Yankees lost 2 in a row to the Angels, and I believe they are beating them fairly handily tonight. And then the Yankees go on a fairly easy trip the rest of September. They get Baltimore next, followed by Toronto, who, we've talked about being a team that could that can win, but just has not put it together. And then they have the 9-11 series coming up with the Subway Series with the Mets starting on the 10th of September, which will be next Friday. And then they get a 1 game against Minnesota, probably a makeup game. It's a 2:05 at home. Then they get Baltimore again, Cleveland, who actually have been playing fairly well. They get Texas, and then they get the hardest part of the end of their schedule, which is Boston, Toronto, and Tampa Bay. I think the Yankees are probably going to end up making the playoffs unless Boston can somehow hold them off, or the Oakland Athletics can do some damage. What do you think about the Yankees streak and all that shit, Adam?
I mean, impressive streak, especially this late into the season. When you go on any streak isn't pretty impressive. When you go above the 10-game winning streak, it is impressive. You just have to be clicking on all cylinders, and they did click on all cylinders. And 13 is not a lucky number. If you look at Unlucky 13, Apollo 13, you don't see a 13 ability number, a floor 13 anywhere. So
nobody died on Apollo 13. That was good. No. Shit. I saw that movie. Tom Hanks was great.
I love that movie. That's one of my favorite movies. Tower of Terror, 13th Floor, Twilight Zone. Come on, man. I will say this though. Streaks can hinder playoff chases. They can hurt you in the playoffs, and we've seen this in the past. If you've seen Moneyball, you know Oakland going on a 20-game winning streak and then bouncing out to Minnesota in the division series. You saw Cleveland in 2017 go on that massive winning streak towards the end of the year. Everyone picked them to repeat as AL champs, get back to the World Series. They go up 2-0 against the Yankees in the division series and then bottom out, losing 3 straight.
We could even talk about the Steelers last year going 11-0 and then just
exactly. And
trash.
This goes for any sport: football, hockey, basketball, even soccer. You go on this massive streaks, and then you can just bottom out. So it's hard to tell how they're going to be right now, but this could hurt them in the playoffs if they get there.
So for me, like, as a, I play fantasy football and fantasy basketball and things like that, and fantasy baseball, obviously. What I like to, where I would rather have a streak happen is kind of at this 3/4 mark in the year, or, kind of end of the season, to where you kind of get chin checked and realize, okay, this is where, we either need to nut up and fight, or, we're going to continue to get knocked down. So I like having, I like losing in that sense at that time, so that, you don't end up riding this win streak into the playoffs and then get chin checked and get knocked on your ass. So I think the Yankees probably, had that streak at the right time. It got them back into the mix. Now they play, above 500 ball the rest of the year. There's a good chance they make the playoffs, which they're completely capable of. Do I want to see that happen? Absolutely not. But that's not my, that's not my role here at the Bullpen Podcast. We just like to talk about these things and talk about what we're seeing. And I mean, the Yankees played well. They had that streak, and now it's over. So moving on, we'll talk about the other bullshit going on in New York over the past week. I'm honestly tired of talking about it, but for the sake of the podcast, the New York Metropolitans, have been booed a lot by their fans, and whether or not you approve of booing or not, it is what it is. The fans pay a shit ton of money to go to these games. They want to see their teams win. It is New York City, where there is a heightened level of expectation and anticipation and desire from these people, and there's just a lot more of them. I mean, let's be honest. There's 10 million people in New York City alone. That dwarfs a lot of the population of multiple teams in the sport of baseball. So what happened is the Mets decided to kind of boo the fans back in giving them a thumbs down start. And the guy that kind of, this has been going on for a while, since kind of early to mid-August, but people didn't really see what was happening until Javi Baez had a hard, fought double that he legged out, and he, thumbs down the fans. The media asked him what it was about. He told them what it was about after the game, and basically said that they were just giving it back to the fans. And if they would have explained it a little bit different, it probably would have been fine. But now it looks like, you're not respecting the relationship of New York fans to New York ball players. And it's basically like, if you suck, you're going to get booed. If you do well, you're an absolute god and will be lifted high above the world and get paid tons of money. And, the richest owner in baseball now owns the Mets. But this was also Francisco Lindor leading this charge. And, he is a very happy-go-lucky guy, which kind of doesn't really fit the whole New York state of mind, who is very grinder, serious, get it done. A lot of people would say miserable, but it is what it is. I mean, as a fan, I don't want to see my team doing this. This New York Mets team is, like I said, is just falling apart. Their GM now got a DUI yesterday, leaving the owner's charity event. They've had, they were hard after Trevor Bauer in the offseason, and that turned out shitty. They had Mickey Callaway, who was accused of being a molester. They had the other general manager that got shit canned because he was, having problems with women. They had the Carlos Beltran thing. I mean, this is on and on and on with this team right now. And this is just like kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back. And then they turn around and win 3 games in a row. Adam, tell me why, as a Mets fan, I shouldn't just like jump off a building or go be a Yankee fan.
Well, I'm not going to tell you to go be a Yankee fan. Don't go extreme measures right there. I think that's too extreme right there. I honestly can't believe what happened with all this fallout with New York. I mean, I'll go back. I think this really started with Carlos Beltran being hired by the Mets. And then, I mean, you could be a Cardinals fan, we'll say that, but I'll leave that to you. With Carlos Beltran being hired, then getting fired right off the bat because of the trash can scandal. I don't say don't completely fall apart in the team yet. Still have faith in the team. I mean, stranger things have happened in baseball to where this could maybe rally a team. Maybe this could be something that kickfires the Mets in the right direction. I'm not in New York, so I mean, in New York, I agree, it's a big pressure town. You got 2 baseball teams, 2 football teams, 2 hockey teams, 2 basketball teams, 2 soccer teams. You got double of every team, so there's definitely pressure to win. So, I mean, you're looking up at the Yankees, who have the championships, the legacy, but the Mets have their own history, and they have their own great history, in my opinion, on being a franchise. I'm going to go Miracle Mets of '69. That's probably my best memory of the Mets. And then, obviously, Buckner, ball going through his legs in the '86 series. Don't give up hope, Chris. Stay with the Mets. Don't jump off the building.
I'm not that guy, dude. I don't quit on my team. So the issue is the big brother shit, right? I mean, we've been looking up at the Yankees for forever. I mean, the 27 championships, that's never going to get caught. We'll never catch it. And that's fine. It is what it is. The Mets have a nice, rich history. They've, it's not like they're completely without, World Series appearances. You had the Subway Series in 2000. You had a really nice team in 2006 that lost to the shithead Cardinals and the NLCS. But they lost to the Royals and a small ball team. And I'll tell you exactly how I knew that Royal series was going to go bad. It's like the first or second play of the game. And I think it was the very first run that the Royals scored. Yoenis Cespedes was playing center field and dropped the fucking ball. And I was like, oh, there it is. We're going to lose the whole series because of that one play. And I knew it. And sure enough, it happened. But I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, I've listened to some other New York-based podcasts and had them, the Shea Anything podcast with Andy Martino, and had him from SNY talking about, this is New York. I mean, it is a different breed here, and somebody needs to get into Lindor's ear. Javi Baez may not be back next year. He might end up just being a rental player, but maybe Cohen, who really likes Francisco Lindor, gets in his ear and says, hey man, this is kind of what the expectation is. And maybe somebody forgot to set that for you. And you need to be the captain of this team. Cause he, when he was in there and things were going pretty well for the Mets, he was a very strong voice, that would rally pitchers in late in ball games and kind of calm the storm. So I think Francisco Lindor can be that voice, but he needs to understand that, this is what's going to happen in New York. And I guess he's brought it up on multiple occasions where, he's been booed throughout the season because he's kind of had a shit season compared to his career. And he, when things went right in a couple games, he was like, well, it was nice to hear the fans cheering. It's like, dude, it's the Mets. It's New York City. You're going to have to suck it up and live it up. And if you're too thin-skinned for it, then we wasted 10 years and $341 million on you. And that's just awful. But I think we're going to see a lot of changes in New York in the next year or two. I think we could see top-down changes with the president, GM, coach. Maybe Beltran even gets another shot at this somehow. A lot of other guys from that trash can scandal have gotten another shot. So maybe Carlos does too. I think he, was a New York Met, one of my favorites. So I would not second chances, whatever. I guess that would mean I would have to stop talking shit to the Trastros, but
we'll never stop doing that. I do want to pose a question to you real quick. Which city do you think it's harder to win in? Do you think it's harder to win New York, East Coast, or would you think it's harder to win LA, West Coast?
It's harder to win in New York because nobody cares about Dodger games. They show up in the third and leave in the seventh. I mean, they have so much more shit to do as well. Like baseball weather, it is all year round in LA. It's only for a few months in New York, and people come out and they support their teams. Plus, I mean, like New York, the populations do rival each other, but LA's so spread out. New York is so much smaller in just geography. And so you have that 10 million people packed into a much smaller geographical region, so they can get to the stadiums much easier. And you have that many more people, just ready to go to Yankee Stadium and Citi Field and support their teams. So, and plus there's just a longer history there. I mean, the Dodgers were the Brooklyn Dodgers before. So, I mean, they are New York. I mean, like I think it's easier to win in LA because there's just not the same amount of pressure and the same media pressure. New York media blew this whole thumbs down thing.
I think a couple of tabloid magazines had this on the front page, and it was trending on Twitter for I think a day or two.
And it's a third place team that's under 500, and like, I mean, this is the thing you have with a New York based team, whether it be the Mets or the Yankees or the Jets or the Giants. Little tiny things are going to get blown way, way out of proportion because of the population, and the people covering these teams need something to talk about. And you have lots of those types of people who have a voice, have a lot of followers on Twitter because there's such a big population in these bigger markets that little stories like this are going to blow up huge because of the size of the media and the size of the market and the size of the fan base.
And imagine if this story happened in like Texas or down here in Florida. Imagine if that happened down here. It wouldn't be such a big media presence because of their small market teams. Unfortunately, it's happened in a very large market. And I mean, if this happened in Chicago you could have the same blow up because Chicago media is just as bad. I mean, White Sox Twitter, you see it. It's weird. Crazy. It is weird. Don't even get me started on White Sox Twitter because that's a whole nother podcast. And I'll probably get roasted by White Sox fans, but my Twitter handle's scrolling across the bottom, so free fire.
Come get him. Well, I'm done ranting about the Mets, and we need to move on anyway. It is September, like we talked about a little bit earlier, last month of the regular season. The September call-ups for the Major League Baseball are starting, and it's a little different this year. The rosters expand from 26 to 28 instead of 25 to 40 like they have historically. A lot of that is around COVID. We have a lot of guys on the playoff contenders that could be called up. Anybody you want to talk about specifically? I have a list of about 10 guys that I found from a Bleacher Report article who predicted a lot of these guys coming up. Doesn't mean that they will, but there are some interesting guys out there in the minors that could get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, I'll pick one because I got the game on mute right now. Gavin Sheets got called back up to the White Sox. Actually just had a 3-run homer in this game that pretty much put the White Sox on top. So he's making an impact back up in the White Sox uniform. One thing I will say is I will go with Luke Riley for the LA Dodgers. He said he hot bat in AAA, so I say that's caution. Just because you're hitting good in AAA doesn't mean that's going to translate into Major League Baseball. Pitching from minor league to Major League Baseball is completely different. The velocity is different. The pitches are different. It's just a different atmosphere. You're coming up to a bigger ballpark, a lot more fans in the park, depending on where you are, and it's just a different beast in itself. I mean, if you've been to minor league games, there's not a lot of people there. There's maybe a couple thousand there at most.
Couple hundred.
You go to a Major League Baseball game, you got 10 to 30,000 people in the stands screaming, drinking beer, yelling at you. It's a different atmosphere. I like what the Dodgers did with this call-up. I just don't think it's going to work for them. I don't think it's going to be a call-up that is going to work for them.
Yeah, he's had a hot bat lately in the minors in his last 16 games. He had a call up earlier to the majors, didn't do such a great job. I think the reasoning behind the thought process is Billy McKinney isn't hitting so great for the Dodgers currently. I think it's like a 150 average in his last 15, 20 games or so. But Billy McKinney is, we saw him in New York earlier this year. He played okay, but people figured him out. I mean, he strikes out a lot. He doesn't make a lot of contact. He can put a heart on the ball, but he is not really somebody that's gonna consistently hit the ball. Guys that I'm looking at are shortstop Jose Barrero for the Reds. He's got a 300 average, 532 ops, 19 doubles, and 17 home runs in AA and AAA this year. So he's pretty fire. The guy I was talking about earlier for the Tampa Bay Rays, second base outfielder Vidal Brujan. He's hitting 321 with 413 on base and a 459 slugging, 15 doubles and 20 steals. So kind of your 5-tool player. I think he's in the top 20s for the overall prospect list. And then as far as pitchers go, Luis Gil for the Yankees. He got a cup of coffee earlier this year. Had 15.2 scoreless innings in his audition, had a lot of strikeouts, not a lot of walks, so he could be a guy that provides some bullpen help for them and potentially some some starting pitching if anybody were to get injured. But there's some other guys, that could get called up that can make some noise. Not really for these playoff teams. I mean, Kyle Wright for the Braves, 2.43 ERA and a 1.04 WHIP with 34 strikeouts in 29 innings pitched in August. If he gets a cup of coffee, he could help the Braves. Some of the other guys that were listed in the article play for teams that we've kind of talked about aren't really going to be contenders going into this final month. But it'll be fun to watch these kids to play baseball.
I'll go back to Brujan you said for Tampa. I think that actually will work for Tampa. That gives them a little more speed on the base paths. Tampa's not really a fast team. So this call-up I like because that gives them a little speed that they'll need. Because when you get into these playoff games, especially when you get into these late inning games, if you're going into the division series or a series where you're tied 3-3 and you're trying to get that lead, you start playing small ball. You're not trying to hit home runs. You're trying to manufacture runs. You're trying to move runners from base to base 90 feet at a time. And this gives them a little speed. So I think of all the call-ups that we have listed, that's probably your best one.
I feel like that's just so stupid that we see such a shift in how baseball's played in the playoffs. Like, play that way all year. mean, geez,
Yeah,
come on, you could win a lot more baseball games.
and
Yes,
these
I'm talking.
games last 4 to 5 hours in the playoffs when the game lasts 3 hours in regular season. Just because, which I don't get that. You watch a 3 hour game in the regular season and then you go to 5 hours. I got to work in the morning. I can't stay up to 2 o'clock in the morning. This is my ranting now.
I don't think the baseball players would like to hear that. You might get a thumbs down from a White Sox player.
I'll give a thumbs down to myself right here.
Well, we are headed for the playoffs, Adam. When do you think we'll see our first playoff clinching team, and who do you think that team's going to be?
I think mid-September is when you'll see that first team clinch the playoff spot. If I remember correctly, San Francisco had the lowest magic number to clinch a playoff spot, not the division, a playoff spot. I think they're like in the mid-teens. So I think San Francisco/LA, I'm going to put LA in that category, will be one of your first two teams to clinch a playoff spot in the National League. American League, Tampa and Chicago are tied for that lowest magic number. I'll give the edge to the Rays. I think the Rays will be your first team in the American League. And I give them third week of September.
Yeah, I agree with both of those, or all four of those teams. I think that's pretty much what we're talking about is those four squads making the playoffs. As far as, some of the fun upcoming series, we've talked a lot about the past week's series, and then some of the earlier games Monday, Tuesday, and tonight. As far as the series to watch this weekend, Adam, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to to Dodgers-Giants, because Giants have had this division pretty much under control for the longest time, but now they've slipped to just a half-game lead. So this is going to be an interesting series. I mean, definitely let's stay up and watch some of these West Coast games, and I hope I please the baseball guys by saying I will stay up and watch West Coast games, because being on the East Coast is a little difficult. But, I'll start with the first game, David Price. Ageless wonder. Does age mean a thing going down the stretch? We talked about this pre-show that he's just been lighting it up lately, and maybe he can be that one Dodger pitcher that pitches them into the division title.
Yeah, it's possible. This is the last series we'll see with the Dodgers and Giants. They have a head-to-head record right now of 1 second. I'm doing my grid right here. They're 8-8. That's fun. I think we talked about that last week, actually. So they're pretty much, they're neck and neck in the standings. They're neck and neck in the head-to-head. So this is pretty much for all the marbles as far as this series goes. David Price, the ageless wonder, versus Anthony Scalafini of the Giants on Friday. Julio Urias for the Dodgers on Saturday. The Giants have not named a pitcher yet. And then Walker Buehler for the Dodgers on Sunday, who is our pick to be the NL Cy Young right now, I think is what we were talking about earlier, Adam. He's got a 2.05 ERA and a .91 whip. He also wins a shit ton of games because he's on the Dodgers. Urias, for being the young kid with his 3.17 ERA and 1.02 whip, this Dodgers pitching staff is lighting it up.
Agreed. Yeah, this Dodgers pitching staff is starting to light up, and that's even without Trevor Bauer, who has been pretty much MIA for pretty much, I want to say, three-fourths of the season, if I'm remembering this correctly.
Now it is.
Yeah, so the Dodgers are going to be that team, that scary team that just turns on at the end of the season. Can they win the division? They pretty much have locked up a playoff spot without having that little Z or Y next to their name in the standings saying that they've clinched a playoff spot.
Clayton Kershaw looked good in his simulated game per the story I just looked up on Google. They get him back, plus they have Mad Max Scherzer and Urias and Buehler. That is what I call a playoff pitching staff. I think the Dodgers probably take this series in San Francisco and potentially sweep, depending on who the Giants roll out there on Saturday and Sunday. moving on to the interleague play, which the Astros being in the American League. I know it's been long enough to where I'm good now, but man, I'm still like a Craig Biggio, Jeff Bagwell, Ken Caminiti kind of Astros guy. So they're always going to be National League to me. It's still odd for me to say American League with them. But
I'll go one step further. It's like the Brewers being National League. I'm still used to the Brewers being in the American League Central, having grown up in Chicago, going to County Stadium, Miller Park. I'm still used to them being an American League Central team, man.
What a trade. It's a shitty trade. For both of us. I mean, I kind of forgot about that as well. Yeah, with Robin Yount and all those guys up in Milwaukee balling out in the 80s. But the Houston Astros will travel to the San Diego Padres, which, I mean, we've talked pretty poorly about the Padres, but they're still in it. I mean, they're still they still have that second wild card spot tied with Cincinnati. They still have every chance, just like everybody else does, to kind of pull their head out of their ass and get it together. The Astros playing very well, have a much better group of pitchers going against the Padres than the Padres do against the Astros. Friday's matchup is Framber Valdez with his 2.91 ERA versus Joe Musgrove, who has a .99 whip, which is phenomenal. Anything under 1 is elite status whip. Also carries a sub-3 ERA. Saturday's matchup features Zach Greinke versus Jake Arrieta. That should be an easy win for the Astros. Sunday has Luis Garcia going up against Chris Paddock for the Padres. What do you see with this series, Adam?
I mean, if I'm looking at it on paper, advantage to Houston. Just from pitching standpoint, with the way the ERAs match up, Houston has lower ERA for every starting pitching. I still don't get why San Diego brought in Jake Arrieta. I still cannot wrap my head around that signing that they did, claiming him off waivers when he got released by Chicago. I just don't get it. I don't know what they were thinking. I just can't wrap my head around that trade. And San Diego, I'm sorry. You may have thought it was a good idea, but I just don't think it's a good sign for them. I think it was probably the worst pickup they could have done this year.
Since we're on the Padres, did you see what they did to Blake Snell the other night, where he had like a 7-inning no-hitter and only had thrown I think it was like right around 100 pitches, and they pulled him out of the game. And like Blake Snell's had a bad year, or a rough go of it lately anyway. But dude, that's a bad look. I hate when I get this new style of analytics baseball and everything like that. And when you see a pitcher starting to go, it's probably better too early than too late. But you got to give a guy a chance to battle, especially if he's got a no going. Leave him in the damn game. Is my opinion. But
I'm right there with you. You let the pitcher battle until he at least gives up a hit. If that hit happens to be a home run, then you pull him out. You have the bullpen warming. I mean, you have someone in the bullpen throwing just to be on the safe side. You have someone warming up in the bullpen, maybe not throwing 2 attempts to get warm up, just kind of keeping their arm loose. But that just gives me flashbacks to last year's World Series, to where he was pitching in Game 6 and he got pulled incredibly early. Had he been left in for Game 6, we could have been looking at Game 7 with the Rays potentially winning the World Series last year. So, I mean, talk about bad luck as a pitcher for him.
Yeah, he's had some bad luck in his career. I mean, didn't he start with the Pirates? That's just bad luck in general.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pittsburgh. I love you. The next series we're going to talk about is it's a little lower in the the kind of the heat index. The Indians at the Red Sox. Red Sox still pushing for that playoff spot, but looking at the Indians lately, they haven't played terrible ball. Like I said, they're 7-3 in their last 10. They're not going to make the playoffs, but they've got some talent on that squad. They've been moving some guys around. They have an okay pitching staff. Cal Quantrill goes on Friday night with his 2.93 ERA and 1.21 WHIP, which is pretty solid, against Nathan Eovaldi. He's got a 365 and a 116 WHIP for Boston, so that's a great pitching matchup on Friday night if you can catch that. Saturday brings Eli Morgan to the bump for the Indians. He's got a 6 ERA and a 130 WHIP, not pretty, versus Tanner Houck for the Red Sox, who's got a pretty stellar ERA and WHIP at 277 and 110 respectively. Sunday brings everybody's favorite commercial man, Zach Plesac, where he gets to ask his uncle a question on the MLB Network, and I've seen that commercial. Man, I've seen it so many fudging times, bro. Like, I swear, every time I watch a Major League Baseball game on the MLB Network, I see the same commercials over and over and over again. It doesn't necessarily mean it's an MLB TV commercial either. It could be like a DraftKings commercial. Good God, they beat the hell out of those, or whatever. I just can't believe that a Major League network doesn't have enough sponsors to put some different commercials out there. All right, off the soapbox. So Zach Plesac throws against Nick Pivetta. This is the two worst pitching. This is a terrible pitching matchup. Don't watch this one if you don't have to on Sunday. I think as far as that Astros-Padres series, the Astros could probably sweep that series pretty easily. Padres need to pull some shit out of their ass and get it back in a groove. This Indians-Red Sox series, I think, could be a split, with the Red Sox winning 2 out of 3, or the Indians could pull out a sneaker on that third game, just because it's a kind of a BS pitching matchup. But I think Friday goes to the Indians, Saturday to the Red Sox, and Sunday's a toss-up. So what do you think of that split there, Adam? You think the Indians got a chance to beat the Red Sox?
They do. I'm right there with you in that split. What are we playing for? Boston is playing for the second wild card spot. I don't think they have enough to catch Tampa. Tampa is just playing lights out, as we talked about before. So they're playing for that second wild card spot. Cleveland, they're 10 games back of the division, 22 or 7.5 games back of the wild card. I think they're playing just to stay over 500 at this point, stay above sea level. I'll go Red Sox with this series. I give advantage to Red Sox. They have a little more to play for.
Cleveland is playing for the land, bro. They're the Guardians. They're playing for their future namesake.
Yeah.
September needs to kick off the Guardians era, and they need to bring it. And the Hope Bridge needs to be celebrated and danced on, and many beers drank. So go Cleveland. Cleveland rocks, as they say. All right, for our final matchup of the weekend, the Oakland Athletics are taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. Touched on this a little bit earlier. Frankie Montas, Paul Blackburn, and Cole Irving go for the A's versus Alex Manoah, Jose Barrios, and Robbie Ray. If you want to watch some good pitching, this is the series. Montas versus Manoah is both under 3, or both have a mid 3 ERA and a sub 120 WHIP. Blackburn on Saturday is sub 3 with a sub 120 WHIP versus Jose Barrios, who was the big pickup for the Blue Jays, has a 3.50 ERA and a 1.13 WHIP. These are all phenomenal numbers, everybody. Cole Irvin on Sunday, even with his 3.74 ERA for the A's, is the highest one of the whole fucking weekend. And that's under 4. It's fantastic. And he's going up against Robbie Ray, who's having one of the best years of his career with his 2.71 ERA and his 1.02 WHIP. I would probably rank this as the second best overall baseball series of the weekend. The implications are, for the A's are huge. For the Blue Jays, not so much. They're in just an uphill battle to make the playoffs, but they still need to play baseball, and they still have a hell of a baseball team in Toronto. They just need to figure it out. Adam, are you going to be watching this series, this Oakland and Toronto series?
This series I would actually be definitely watching. MLB TV's shameless plug right there. Gotta love it. But yeah, I'll go with the Paul Blackburn and Jose Barrios pitching matchup. That's a sexy pitching matchup on paper. Don't get me wrong on that. Just looking at the whips in general, 1.19 versus a 1.13. That's just a good pitching matchup right there. And then obviously, yeah, Robbie Ray, good pickup from Arizona. He pitched. I saw him pitch in Arizona. He was good in Arizona. He continues to be good in Toronto. But if I had to go advantage, athletics, Toronto has struggled against some of these teams, and Oakland, I think, can pull this series out. I'm not saying a sweep. I say 2 out of 3.
So, a little bit of. I mean, I'm not going to say MVP, stuff with Vlad Guerrero, but he's probably the only one that could even touch Ohtani at this point. Ohtani got hit in the hand earlier in the week, and that sucked and was scary. And they actually said he swung the bat and called him out. It was strike 3. It was so stupid. But, yeah, go look that up. If you guys have a chance, Shohei Ohtani gets hit in the hand, and he's like kind of trying to duck out of the way of the ball at the same time. So like he's almost trying to pull the bat like behind his head and get his hands out of the way, and he gets smashed in his left hand or his right hand. I'm sorry, and yeah, I think they called him out. So really silly things on the umpires. Can't wait for robots, but. On the flip side, it has been a wonderful evening talking baseball with you, Adam, and absolutely. I once again am looking forward to a great end of the season. So many things are changing. I think at its core, this season is kind of where we thought it would be. There's been some drop-offs, with teams like the Mets and the Padres, but there's been some exciting runs by teams like the Braves and the Yankees. So I'm really we're there. I mean, September is where the magic happens. If the New York Mets are down 5.5 and have 30 to go, they can pull that out. It'll be like the reverse of 2007, where they lost a 7-game lead with 17 games to go.
Absolutely. I mean, this is going to be a hell of a way to end September. I mean, if you thought last year was crazy with 8 teams trying to get in, shrinking down to now 5 teams per league, this is going to be a crazy-ass finish going down the stretch.
Yes, sir, and we'll be here for all of it, and we will talk to you guys next week. Have an awesome night, and see you later.
Have a good night.